second. Now, viewers, let's just look to tomorrow, because we will, towards the end of the show, also look back to today, where India has also, of course, spoken to the Iranian president, as well as, of course, President of Russia, Vladimir Putin. But I'll come to that in just a few moments. Let's just focus on the Chinese story. The Chinese have confirmed that there has been a breakthrough that ensures that the deadlock at Ladakh has ended. The statement from China confirms the claim made by EAM Jaishankar, who said that the positive agreement between the two sides ensures that the situation along the LAC in the Ladakh corridor has returned to what existed in 2020 and that the disengagement process has been completed. This is a statement put out by China. India and China have maintained close communication through diplomatic and military channels regarding border-related issues. The two sides have reached a solution on relevant matters, which China views positively. In the next phase, China will work with India to implement the solution plan, unquote. The breakthrough is a vindication, some people are saying, for more diplomacy. They say the NDA stood its ground and went toe-to-toe with China at the frigid heights. Wearing the dragon down, the strategy proved only iron can actually cut iron. Here's what the breakthrough means. There'll be a disengagement at the remaining face-offs at Depsang and Demchok in Ladakh. That's the hope. China troops will no longer actively block Indian soldiers at the bottleneck area in the Depsang Plains, 18 kilometers inside India's own territory, and vice versa. Relocation of temporary posts that both sides had set up in Depsang Plains. Disengagement in Charding Ninglung Nala track junction near Demchok in the south. All of this, of course, needs to be fleshed out, viewers. But there is hope that all of this will happen, and two sides will coordinate patrols and limit it to about 15 soldiers each to avoid confrontation. So this is what the breakthrough could, in the near term, look like. Of course, the long term is that one has to move towards disengagement. One will have to also try and fix this boundary issue that has been, as you know, viewers, a millstone around both the necks of China and India for now 70 odd years since they gained independence. So let's open this up. I want to bring in Brahma Chilani. I also want to bring in Vincent Gao. There's, of course, Sushant Sareen there. Brahma Chilani, I know we cannot read too much into all of this, but what do you think led China to suddenly concede, suddenly at this point in time? Please explain, because for 4 years, we've seen them behave very truculently. There hasn't been much movement. The EM has come out and said we have a very stressed relationship. And then suddenly we have what appears to be some sort of a thaw.
Rahul, what has China conceded?
Okay.
That's the first question we need to ask. Or what has India conceded? What have been the concessions on India's part? Even the details of what has been agreed upon is not clear. In fact, there's a disconnect in India between the statement made by the Indian Foreign Minister yesterday and the comments made today by the army chief. Yesterday, Jaishankar said that we have returned to the pre-2020 situation and that disengagement is complete. Today, the army chief says the opposite. He says, we want to return to the situation that prevailed before April 2020. Thereafter, he said, we will think about disengagement, de-escalation, and normalcy at the LAC. Look at the discrepancy between these two statements. As far as the Chinese statement is concerned, it is a terse statement that came a day late. It reveals nothing, doesn't even mention patrolling agreement between the two sides. So I think we should be very cautious not to hype what understanding has been reached between the two sides. What is important is that they have made an important step. That step is designed to reduce tensions. And we can hope that this will be part of a process to at least significantly lower tensions, because some things cannot be undone. For example, the permanent warfare-related infrastructure that China has now built along the entire Himalayan frontier with India, that cannot be undone. And the face-offs are not just at Depsang and Demchok, Rahul. They are face-offs also in other areas, including the Sikkim-Tibet border, the Arunachal-Tibet border, for example. And in fact, Jaishankar said yesterday, he said it's not just Depsang, and Demchok. There are other areas too. So we don't know as to what has been agreed upon by the two sides. The last time there was the last time the two sides agreed upon something was to create these buffer zones,
Yeah,
but no details were released intentionally because these buffer zones have come up largely on Indian
Indian
territory.
territory.
So
Okay.
so that's why we should not hype the latest understanding.
Right. Sushant Sareen, it seems to me that a lot of people are skeptical because China is fundamentally undependable.
Look, it's not just about China being undependable. It's a question is that in these kind of matters, you don't really trust anybody until you can verify it on the ground. And even when you verify it on the ground, you have there has to be a constant vigil. Now, I agree that many of the details of the latest understanding that has been reached are not very clear. We've got snatches of information, dribbles of it coming out in various newspaper reports and other reports, but we don't have any official account of what exactly has transpired and what exactly is the roadmap to a kind of normalization. Secondly, and I think more critically, is what Brahma points out, that there has been really no concession as such. There's just an understanding which has been reached, and frankly, the bottom line is that the Chinese have it's an old Chinese ploy that they first take two steps, they take a couple of steps forward, then they take one step back, and they've still gained ground. So I think we need to be very careful about how the Chinese operate. Now, it's all very well to say that, look, there are these suspicions, etc., etc. But look, there is a lived experience, and the lived experience is that when have the Chinese ever been fair or nice or friendly towards us? Yes, we do business with them. Yes, there are a number of international forums in which we are together in those forums. But let's face it, when have the Chinese ever been friendly towards us? They are building the China-Pakistan economic corridor over an area which is a sovereign Indian territory, might not be under India's control right now, and the Chinese have constantly propped up the Pakistanis to snap at India's heel. It's a loyal dog which snaps every time the master tells it to snap at India's heel. So clearly the Chinese have followed a policy which is not exactly going to inspire any confidence in India, and I don't see any reason why we need to mince our words about what the Chinese game plan has been. Again, let me come back to BRICS, because it's in that backdrop this entire conversation is taking place.
True.
The reason why I keep bringing in the BRICS and I keep bringing in China in this whole thing is that whatever understanding you want to reach in the BRICS is going to come crashing down on the rocks of reality of Chinese behavior with countries like India.
Good point.
At that point, there is no way we can go forward with it, regardless of what anybody else might say.
Yeah, so that's the question.
Until and unless the Chinese change their strategy towards India, and as of now, it's inimical.
Victor Gao, let me bring you in. You want BRICS to succeed, but you don't want to facilitate the success. You want to, in fact, deny India a permanent seat in the UNSC. You eye our land. You are propping Pakistan. You have taken over parts of our land also with regards to POK. This is not helpful, and no one trusts you.
Thank you very much for having me. First of all, BRICS is a success story, and it's becoming more and more a bigger success story. It increased its membership from 5 to 10 last year. More countries are demanding their entry into BRICS. There are more than 30 countries waiting on the list, and you're talking about important countries which wants to join BRICS. And I think BRICS is an organization of some of the panelists compare the BRICS with G7. G7 is an organization of the past. BRICS is an organization of the future. And I think it's very encouraging that both China and BRICS, the two largest populations in the world, are BRICS members. And it is really to the credit of both the Chinese government and the Indian government to have reached this agreement about the border patrol. And we do not know the details, but let me assure you, more details will be forthcoming It is always for China and India to talk about peace, to talk about using diplomacy to solve whatever problems there are between China and India. Now, on the other hand, are there territorial disputes between China and India? Of course there are. And we fought a border clash back in 1962. But let me assure my Indian friends, the border disputes between China and India are not created by India, neither were they created by these border disputes. It was created by the British Indian Empire. Where is the British Indian Empire? It's gone. It's in the dustbin of history. Neither China nor India should be held hostage by the Indian Empire under the British rule. We should be smarter than that.
Okay.
We should be able, for the Chinese people and the Indian people have enough
we can't keep blaming the Brits. The Brits are gone. We need to sit across the table. But you need to create.
Rahul.
One second, Mr. Gao. 1 second. I'm sorry I'm interrupting you. Just 1 second. Yes, Mr. Wagma, you want to come in?
Yeah, very briefly, Rahul. The Empire of India devolved into the Indian Union in 1947. India got the seat at the UN as well as being incumbent upon all treaties that were signed from British India days to the treaties that India picked up as such. Governments and administrations may change. So the Chinese contention that it was an imperialist ploy with a similar conference of 1912 and 1913 and that China is not a signatory to it is another matter and is not entirely tenable because this is a fact of international relations that governments devolve and form their treaties and are inheriting legacies from the past which are perfectly legitimate everywhere. And so that immediately answers that. Thank you, Rahul, for that intervention. And second point is just this, I want to leave again as a historian. Far from this Sino-Russian rapprochement over the Ukraine or this anti-Western axis that has been evolving in recent decades, it would be well and salutary for Indians to realize this, Rahul, that Gorbachev on his November 86 state visit on the last day at his press conference was very, very ambivalent. And he made it quite plain to the Indians that should there be another Sino-Indian showdown, Moscow could not be counted upon to assist India in any form. And I think Indians will do well to realize that. The realists among Indians, I'm sure Brahma and Sushant do, but there is a forlorn hope in certain coterie of Indian thinking which thinks that India can still bank upon a Putin or other successor in the future.
Let me ask that question on Ms. Kokareva.
That is not going to happen.
Yeah, I was in any case coming to that question.
And Gorbachev made that clear at the heyday of Indo-Soviet friendship on the eve of the Festival of India, which opened in January.
Two people want to get into this, Ms. Kokareva and Sushant Sareen. Okay, Ms. Kokareva, go first, yes.
Rahul, let's just briefly remind our viewers that Mr. Gorbachev was the leader of the Soviet Union, which is not Russia. You know, the Soviet Union fell apart, and we right now are talking about Russia, which was not ever, run by Mr. Gorbachev. It's a different country. I'm sorry, but if we're talking about let's stop blaming the Brits, then let's stop mixing the two, The Soviet Union was a different story.
But there is a concern here. Look, under the BRICS umbrella, under Mr. Putin's nose, are two countries, formidable powers in their own right, the most populous countries on this planet, that are not seeing eye to eye. How much can the Russians leverage their relationships on both sides to get these two to talk together? And should Russia be playing a more active role in dissuading China?
Rahul, we're talking about a meeting that has just been confirmed tomorrow, that you just yourself said that it is a massive, even if we're talking just about a meeting, there is still a step. There is no such thing as baby steps in politics. Especially in international politics. The fact that there will be a meeting means that Russia, however it is doing the job, is doing a good job. It is happening in Russia, on Russian soil, and we will have to wait and see what comes out of it. But just to, again, to come back to the lovely statements that we're making right here, about Mr. Gorbachev, about the rest of it. We've just had confirmation from the UN Secretary General's office that he is participating in this summit. So coming back to the beginning of our discussion, we can talk a big talk about BRICS being just talk. The UN is coming. And that means that however the State Department is saying that this summit is not important, if the UN General Secretary is coming, then it is important. And they are keeping a close eye and they are worried. I'm sorry.
Sushant Sareen, yes, you wanted to come in.
On a lighter note, the UN Secretary General coming for a BRICS meeting actually raises serious questions about how useful the meeting is going to be. Because given the personality of that guy, I have virtually zero faith on him. But aside of
That's a different story.
The question which Burzine Wagmer raises, look, it's not just about in the event, and I don't think either China is or India is stupid enough to try and get into a warlike situation, notwithstanding the tensions which exist. But let us assume a situation like that was to emerge. Okay, maybe Russians will not come to our help. But will the Americans and will the Brits and will the others do?
No.
Number one. Number two, will they come and fight on our side, or will they do to us what they have done to the Ukrainians? That we'll keep giving you the weapons, you keep fighting against the Russians, you keep getting killed, you keep devastating your economy. Don't even try to enter into any kind of a peace agreement, a ceasefire. Do nothing of the sort. Keep fighting, keep getting your people killed. We'll keep giving you weapons. So that you fight, in a manner of speaking, you fight our war for us against the Russians. Why they want to fight the Russians, I don't know. Why they've been constantly wanting to poke the Russians, I have no idea. I have some idea, but I don't think this is the place to talk about it. But the bottom line is that forget about Russians coming to India's help. I don't think anybody else is going to do. So we have to be very clear. In the event of any conflict, we are on our own. And if we are thinking of getting into a conflict because somebody will be on our back, then I think it's better to surrender. Because nobody will come to our assistance.
Mr. Chileni, does this thaw, incipient as it might be, between India and China also, perhaps if it results in something more, deprive then the West of leverage? They keep sort of, the word scarecrow was used by Ms. Kukreva. So, the scarecrow is China. That's the one that is flagged. And India is told, better be careful. It might be right. I'm not saying it's not. But I'm just saying, would if the ties improve, would that leverage then capacity also decrease?
If China and India can ease their hostilities, it will work to the advantage of both Beijing and New Delhi. And that's the reason why both countries are seeking to reduce their tensions. It detracts from their global geopolitical objectives. After all, despite their bilateral disputes and sharpening geopolitical rivalry, at the global level, China and India do have some common geopolitical objectives, including creating non-Western institutions, mechanisms, and arrangements that are immune to political intervention of the kind that we have seen.
Yes.
For example, removing Russian banks from SWIFT system, or weaponizing finance, for example. The reason why gold prices today are at a record high is because many central banks in the non-Western world are holding gold as a hedging strategy, as they think of how they can reduce their heavy reliance on the US dollar. But so there are two things here. First, the influence of BRICS is growing as it becomes a beacon for overhauling existing international arrangements, even as BRICS faces some daunting challenges, including uniting as a more meaningful global force.
Yes.
On the other side, we have China and India. Now, these two countries make up more than a third of the global population. Now, if they can peacefully coexist and cooperate, it can change global geopolitics.
Okay.
But we know China, that China is a revisionist power that is seeking hegemony in Asia.
Okay, so Mr. Gao, put your money where your mouth is. What do you think is going to come out tomorrow? Is there going to be a substantive shape given to this rapprochement? Will we have some details? Or do you think this is just going to be a pleasant photo op? Very quickly, sir, I have 30 seconds.
Thank you very much. First of all, let's hope and let's pray for a very positive outcome from the Xi-Modi summit in Kazan tomorrow. Secondly, it takes two to tango. Both China and India need to come in with our efforts to make sure that these two largest populations not only do the right thing for the Indian people, for the Chinese people, but for mankind as a whole. Third, I hope India will remain as a very loyal, very constructive, very important member of BRICS. More than a decade ago, right now, and many, many years in the future, both China and India should play a very important role within the framework of BRICS. If anyone in India says that he or she is a denial of BRICS, I don't think it is in the fundamental interest of the people in India or the government in India, etc.
I have to leave it at
the
this.
The future of India.
We'll have to focus like hawks on that meeting tomorrow. Let me tell you, viewers, Washington will be tuning in. London will be agog. Even Ottawa, sitting wherever it is going to be tuning in. This is a fundamental and very, very important turn of events. India and China sitting across the table, viewers, is replete with significance and consequentiality. I'll leave it at this. We'll be tracking that tomorrow on the Hard Facts.